Welcome to RHI's Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today, we are joined by Allison Harnden, the Pittsburgh Nighttime Economy Manager, where she oversees planning and management strategies citywide and coordinates with the city's departments, services, policies, and resources needed to ensure safe, vibrant, and sustainable opportunities to socialize. She also serves as the NITECAP Alliance president.
Hey, Allison, it's good to see you again, and I'm always delighted to have these conversations.
It's good to see you too. Thanks
Yeah.
for inviting me.
Yeah, well, back in the beginning of COVID, I think it was 2021, I interviewed you. And at the time in the interview, you mentioned that the vaccine hadn't even been developed and that you were anticipating how things would change, but you were in the middle of some challenges and you had this network of people like yourself, nighttime managers or directors of nighttime offices or nightlife offices or night czars, night mayors. It was called all different things, but it was really just a fledgling group of people who were in these positions. And COVID happened, and you started to have a little bit of a network forming. But then since then, it's grown to be quite a significant organization with great innovation among its members. And now you've been elected as the president. And you're leading this group. So maybe you could kind of trace a little bit of evolution from that first meeting in Seattle to the conflict of COVID and how you all have emerged to really establish a profession.
Yeah, well, it's quite a journey. I used to work for a Responsible Hospitality Institute, and they really planted the seed for the creation of these roles in cities. And in fact, we didn't call it a sociable city summit then, but we were in Austin when there was a session on, hey, what if we had this role in city government? What would it look like? And what's the job description? So as part of writing that job description, and I think that was 2010, and then in 2015, this position came available in Pittsburgh, and the actual job description was one that I wrote. So, there really weren't that many people doing this work back then. And when I started in Pittsburgh in 2015, there were just a handful of us, and we would have like a quarterly phone call. And it was very supportive. But then what we would do is every time a new person was coming on board in another city or there was talk about it, we would, help introduce them to some lessons learned from our part, our standpoint, and that it would kind of help maybe move them along a little faster or provide more comfort or outcomes. But during COVID, those very spaced out calls became almost weekly calls. And with some people, probably I was outreaching to somebody daily because there were so many things changing then. And we really had to lean on each other and say, what are you doing in your city? And, how are you doing this? That was the real thing. And I think that's maybe part of the difference with RHI is like RHI has the why. And maybe NITECAP has the how in the very details of like what it takes to roll out outdoor dining. Sounds simple, but there's a lot of components to it. So we started thinking as, the vaccine came online and that there was, as we're trying to come back together and stabilize our cities, that we found it even more important to continue that. We were even busier then, so it made it really difficult for our founding members to start up an organization. You know what it's like to start a nonprofit. And so, we worked on being incorporated as a nonprofit, and we did so in March of 2022. And, started laying out what do we want to accomplish. And, at that time, there was a little bit of a surge in more people coming on board. There was New York, Washington, D.C., then there was like, Nashville and Boston, and, they were just starting to kind of roll in New Orleans. And, we would get a phone call that said, hey, we're thinking about creating this office. Is there somebody we could talk to about it? And we would pull together a team and say, we'll answer your questions. What do you want to know? And what have we learned? So that's one of the things that I think we started seeing a value to. I mean, RHI does that in the big sociable city way, you know, that it requires so many players, but we're saying particularly about this role. Why is it important? What can they do? What's the best placement of it? You know, how can it be sustainable? So I think then now, you know, entering our fourth year, but really fifth because we weren't incorporated before, we were just getting together, but really being that support. I think we've gone, you know, from that kind of core of leaning on each other and saying, how are you doing this, to this is an important thing to have in your city. And we're still uplifting those kind of new nighttime management roles, but providing that thought leadership and also starting to do things where we're getting called in for other particular things. Like we're not a consultancy. We'll just do a quick, you know, 1 hour phone call with somebody that we just did one with a city that was looking at a new approach with zoning. And so they wanted to talk to a lot of different cities and get their input on that. So, you know, it's exchanging strategies, it's supporting each other, it's even sometimes having other night managers talk to our own city. And we're doing that with some issues in Pittsburgh too.
So it's become an important kind of brainstorming network and a network that helps people get off the ground. Now, in the beginning, you know, obviously you had a similar position back in the 1990s when you were working in San Diego with what we called the Hospitality Resource Panel, which was kind of similar to an Office of Nightlife.
Yeah.
But over the years, it's kind of gained momentum after Merrick Milan out of Amsterdam introduced the term night mayor, and that really got a lot of attention in the media. But then you had, like you said, cities that all of a sudden say, oh, we want to have a night mayor, and then they create the position, but nobody knew what that position was, and they didn't know where to put it, and they didn't know how to fund it. And so it sounds to me like what you're saying is that this has matured a little bit. I know you have some support staff. I know some offices have multiple staff that support the office, whereas it may have started out as just one person who didn't have a job description or an office. You know, look at New Orleans. You know, I remember when that was started, Howie didn't even have an office to work out of, you know, and now they have staff and they just put together a comprehensive publication and a
Yeah.
lot of strategies around parking for musicians and hospitality workers. So you have a lot of innovation that's coming out of this network, and you're building upon each other. So, how do you see that being justified to cities who are thinking about doing something like this, especially when you're beginning to look at multiple staff positions and a budget that goes along with that?
Well, I think in one ways we're creating more efficiency within the city. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize it's they just look at nighttime economy in a very, you know, the general public doesn't see like how the sausage is made. You know, it's like there's a lot of connections, even sustainability and environmental things. So really that over the years, I'm just talk from my own experience, um, it's gone from that basic we're the liaison for food, beverage, entertainment businesses to really helping the city be a city that adapts to operating at night. I don't necessarily say 24-hour city here. It's not a 24-hour city isn't for everybody, but there are things that are going on 24 hours. So it's like you got to kind of acknowledge that, right? And transportation is a big part of that for a 24-hour city. So I would say that, you know, we're working with the comprehensive plan to kind of bake in what are the needs of having a thriving nighttime economy that isn't just about nightlife, it's about life at night and about providing social opportunities, which have been proven that are good for your health. So why don't we invest and create policy and a structure and infrastructure to support the well-being of our citizens? We're working with, you know, transportation. We're working with recycling. we just only a couple of years ago did a plastic bag ban. How does that roll out to our industry, and how does that affect them? And what we're doing is really bringing in our businesses that we now already have that relationship with to help the city make better policy. How does that land on the business? In the past, it's been more like, oh, city will create policy and just put it out there, and then they find out like, ooh, we got some problems here. So uh, I would say even if you're outlaying this money for staffing these departments, in the end, it's going to bring in a more robust economy, streamline the business practices and the policies within the city, and create better relationships. And working with RHI and doing consulting, there was often this relationship problem with the city and businesses, and that this is actually really bridging that divide. And businesses are an important part, not just to the city, but to residents. That income, those economic impact brings in the quality of life and provides tax relief to residents. So it's all a part of a big system. And the nighttime economy managers have a toehold in all of these different things that can improve the quality of customer service delivery and quality of life.
Now, I know that there's a number of variables that happen with nightlife, and particularly, relative to mobility, but also just in terms of public safety. And Pittsburgh has evolved, and we even showcase Pittsburgh's approach to policing and dedicated officers. But again, this is another thing that cities have to make a decision about. How do we fund having police presence without overpowering people with too many police, or having police in conflicts of interest with venue operators? How do we create that system? And you really started a very innovative approach. While some cities might have a business improvement district, they're more oriented to the daytime economy. But what you did is put together a parking enhancement
Yeah.
approach that generates funding that helps to support this public safety, as well as street maintenance and quality of life issues that you've been talking about are so important. So can you explain kind of how that evolved and how it's structured and what the benefits of it are as just one of many tools that are in the toolkit among your network?
Yeah, well, actually, maybe you forgot because it was a while ago, that Pittsburgh consulted, or RHI consulted with Pittsburgh in a sociable city plan. And part of that sociable city plan had a mobility component. And one of the things that was discovered was that there was no collection of night parking in the entertainment district. And this was also, this neighborhood is not downtown, it's outside of downtown, it's a mixed use area. And the impact, there were impacts being created at night that were more than the city services could provide. So when you have a lot of nightlife people coming in with their cars, parking, creating trash and other traffic congestion. There were sometimes some unsafe things. People didn't want to, they wanted to not pay for parking, so they park back in the residences. So the idea was like, let's create this ability to collect parking revenue at night and put it back into the neighborhood, like almost like a business improvement district, which this neighborhood did not have. So actually, this started, it was one of the first projects that I was handed, and to help implement this in coordination with the mayor's office and the parking authority and the council district for that neighborhood. It took there were a lot of steps: legislation, residential permit parking. What are we going to do with this money, and how does it go? Does it go into this trust fund? So generally, these things are called parking benefit districts, and there's an organization, Parking Reform Network, that is putting together a cookbook, they're calling it, of strategies, and Pittsburgh is being included in that. So with that, we started out collecting from Friday and Saturday, 6 to midnight. And then we expanded that to include Thursday because Thursday was sort of becoming the new Friday. And then we expanded it to Sunday because Sunday was becoming the new Saturday. So now we collect Thursday through Sunday. We also expanded the hours because we were finding that people were hanging around after bar closing too long, and actually there were some safety problems happening. This was like right after COVID. So we extended it to 3 a.m., hoping that that might also deter people from sticking around and partying out of their cars and that type of thing. So like you said, it funds a clean team that cleans 2-person and clean team that cleans every day of the week, which the city can only provide equal services to neighborhoods. So in a neighborhood that has this influx of visitors and more impact, this is a way to get that supplemental service. And it also provides, they get another person during peak season in summertime and spring. We've paid for police cameras, some police training. They even used it for we use it for porta potties on event days like St. Patrick's Day. And there's even used it for economic development purposes and, creating the banners and things like that mark the district and promote the district. There are some other things that are being looked at right now in owning a kind of a spot power washer, instead of bringing that they can cart around in the little cart instead of bringing in a service to do it once a year or so. So there's just it's been really an amazing tool for this. And actually, there are other neighborhoods that want to model it. One already has, and there are 3 more that are in the pipeline. Next month, or maybe the month after, we're going to hit. We implemented it in April 2017, and we are going to hit the 2 million mark.
Oh, wow,
Very soon.
congratulations.
And
Yeah,
that's
so
like
this
a
is a great
$1.50 an
innovation.
hour parking, it's really amazing that amount of money has been collected.
Yeah, no, it's a great case study. And I think this really lends itself to the importance of the NITECAP Alliance, because I'm sure among the 15 or 20 or so cities now that have, and now you're starting to see more Canadian cities coming on board. Toronto just announced RFP to get somebody to take on this position in the city of Toronto. So, and they have one in Ottawa too. So you have it growing in North America, but also throughout the world. There's a global network where you're probably approaching 100 cities that have some form of nighttime management. But clearly, you just outlined one of the really exciting ways, but also the way you describe it. It's not like somebody says, "Hey, let's start this parking enhancement district," and then all of a sudden you have $2 million in the bank. It sounds to me like everybody has to understand that this really requires a lot of coordination, a lot of dedication, and that the Office of Nightlife, the nighttime economy, the social economy, as I call it, is really something that has a focus. And I imagine that in some cities, what I've seen is some of these same challenges that are happening late at night are beginning to happen during the day as you're beginning to move more markets and festivals. And there was an interesting article that came out of China about how, because of the heat, they're moving their festivals
Yeah,
into
I
the
saw that.
evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That was
so,
a prediction I made a
huh?
few years ago. I made that prediction.
Yeah, yeah. So now all of a sudden, your daytime festivals are now going to become evening festivals
Mhm.
that will spill over to impact the resources that are necessary for a nightlife district. So, yeah, there are a lot of challenges that your network are facing, and it seems to me you're a model for them, and it's obvious why you've become their president. So, I look forward to continuing to work with you and to see this network evolve. And just to put in a plug, NITECAP has become an important and integral part of our annual summit, creating very specialized seminars and workshops to share their
Mhm.
success stories. So this has been a great partnership so far, and I'm glad to see the evolution from those early days when you and I worked in San Diego to where you are now. So thank you for your time, Allison.
And thank you for not saying what year that was, because then you're going to date me. But no,
oh,
and I will say
Allison.
that the Nightcap really looks forward to every year, like what kind of content can we create that will be relevant to not just night managers, but to other people that attend the Sociable City Summit. And it's a really integral part of our monthly meetings. So yeah, we thank you for that partnership, and it's a way that you and I can stay friends too.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, and
Mhm.
I look forward to seeing you.
Okay, bye.